destroy your canopy.
No, we're not.
So we've been flying for about 5 hours. It's a long time to fly. We go to your second time destination, and we look, and it came down around like this, and it came around like this, and it was coming up underneath us. So my pilot pulled back on the seat to avoid it, and I looked up, and there's the tail of the 707. And basically, get out of the way. And for about a millisecond, throw it out.
Yeah.
So there was one other time, and there was one other time,
Who's the real?
I was already, yeah, right, you know, but
I'm kind of a military,
very good.
yeah, wannabe. I'm a wannabe. Never was.
There was one time we were in the Philippines, just from training, just a single plane, and my pilot, I think he wanted to see how high the airplane could go, and we got moved out there to like 49,000 feet.
Dug down all year round.
And it suddenly got really, really quiet. I said, "What is? Let's go high." You know, what you do is you slowly nose over, build up some speed, and you basically jumpstart jet engines at 300 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. The engine in the Top Gun was not our favorite part of the airplane.
Well, at least you had two of them.
Yes, but they wouldn't have made seriously.
What was it like riding in the backseat where he makes a violent maneuver? How do you know he's going to do it without your head going the other way?
Well, when you're young and you don't know much, you could probably bounce your head off the canopy when you're going. As you get more experience, you know what's I never had that problem. But it was, that's what I always wanted to say. I want to be in the front seat. I went to flight school, and that's when I found my eye. It was just, I was about 2015 at the time, but there was something else that, and so they stuck me in the back seat. But I loved it. I didn't like being away from home for 8 months at a time. I didn't like some of the office projects that believe it or not goes on. But the flying was fun. And actually, I spent one tour on a cruise ship as a captain. So I wasn't flying. And I always thought, gosh, if that goes to the airplanes and not flying, it would be horrible. Actually, it was one of the more fun jobs I had in the Navy. Very exciting. Like this all day long.
Yeah, I know that all those guys on deck wear different colored shirts because they do a different role.
Yep. There he is.
Thank you.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
All right.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Waukee, and welcome to Mickey's. I want to thank Amy and Andy Walsh for being so gracious to hold the town hall here for Governor Christie. My name is Shelley Hughes. I'm on City Council here, and I'm a supporter of Governor Christie, and I'm so glad to have him here in our wonderful town. I'm so glad to have him back here in Iowa. And I'd like to introduce one of his latest supporters, Representative Jake Highfill from Johnston.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jake Highfill. I represent Johnston and Grimes and a little bit of Urbandale in the Iowa House. I'm going to tell you about a minute or two why I support the governor, and I'm also going to tell you what it means to be an Iowan. By the way, up front, we have two converted New Jerseyans coming to become Iowa, living here. You voted for the governor twice already? There you go. They live in Iowa now, though. They converted. But I'll tell you, as an Iowan, It is your God-given right to pick presidential candidates and vet all of them. Every one of them, if they don't ask for your vote, you don't shake their hand, they don't get your vote. And one of the reasons that I'm endorsing Governor Christie is because of that reason exactly. He comes around, does town halls, and it's not fake, it's real. There's substance in the answers, everything he questions about. There's no stage questions, no layups. He's here. He's going to take real questions. He's going to answer honestly, and the answers are not going to be 10-second sound bites. They're going to be real answers that take at least a few minutes to talk about. That's why I endorsed him. The other reason I endorse him is because the honesty that he has with you. He'll tell you that I can't be with you on an issue. I'd rather have somebody tell me no than lie to my face and go vote somewhere else, then go to New Hampshire, then go to South Carolina and change your answer every single time. He will not do that, and that's why I endorse the governor. I'm happy to endorse him. On February 1st, I know it'll snow, because that's what always happens on caucus day. It will snow. It'll be 10 degrees, but I want you to pack in those gyms. I want you to go to those town halls and everywhere else, and please, join me in endorsing and caucusing for Governor Christie.
Well, good evening. Thank you all very much. It's great to be back here. Thank you again, everybody, for coming and for listening. I had a guy. We have an overflow room next door. I want to say hello to the overflow room. We have about 40, 50 people over there. It's kind of light in there. It's not very warm in there, and they're sitting in chairs and listening. So I went over and said hello to all of them first because they couldn't fit in here. That's a good problem to have 33 days before the caucus, right? And one of the guys said to me, he had a picture that he and I had taken together earlier in the summer at the state fair where I was working behind the bar and serving drinks. And he said, now, Governor, I'm seeing you again. You're back in a bar again. So what's this tell us about your candidacy? And I said, it just means that after you've had a few drinks, I'm really charming. That's what it means. So I encourage everyone to drink as much as you like tonight because my answers get better and better. Every drink you have, you're like, man, that guy's smart. And then if you have like 4 or 5 drinks, you start saying, hey, he's good looking too, man. This is really good. So keep drinking and having a good time tonight. I appreciate you being here and taking the time. This is my 3rd day in Iowa. I got here on Monday. We had to cancel our 2 town halls on Monday. And on Monday, I had the great joy of driving from O'Hare Airport to Davenport. So now I feel like a real Iowan. I do. This is really good. And we had to cancel our 2 events on Monday because of the weather. We didn't want anybody getting in trouble, anybody getting hurt. But we did 3 town halls yesterday. This is my 3rd town hall today. I started the day in Waterloo. Then I went from Waterloo to Marshalltown. And now here in Waukee, I'm happy to do my 3rd one of the day. My wife, Mary Pat, sends her regards, as do my 4 children. They are at a Broadway show today. They went to see Aladdin. And then they were going out to dinner. And they just sent me a picture to my phone of the 5 of them at dinner. And I said, good for you. I'm here working to get my next job. So, but they send their best regards to all of you. And on my next trip out here after the 1st of the year, we'll have Mary Pat at least with me and maybe 1 or 2 of the kids as well who are still on college breaks. So they've enjoyed traveling with me, and I enjoy bringing them around because I'm proud of them. And you get to know a little bit more about a person by their family as well, and who I was lucky enough to marry. March 8th, which will be another primary day. I forget which states have primaries on March 8th, but March 8th will be my 30th wedding anniversary. And yeah, that applause is really for her. For her to put up with me for 30 years. So we'll be back here and working really hard together between now and caucus day on February 1st. I just want to talk to you about one thing off the top, and then we're going to go to your questions, and the rest of the evening will be occupied by me answering your questions on whatever is on your mind. I thought it was really interesting to read in the news yesterday that Al-Qaeda is beginning to reconstitute terrorism camps in Afghanistan with the help of the Taliban. Sound familiar? I mean, it sounds like that's a news story from 15 years ago. Yet we're back there again. Why are we back there again? We're back there again, in my opinion, because of the foreign policy of this president and his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, who couldn't wait to drag troops out of Iraq And after they pulled all of our troops out of Iraq, what happened? ISIS took over in Iraq. ISIS is now using Iraq as a staging area for terrorist recruitment and terrorist attacks, not only in that region, but in Europe and here in the United States. And now they've moved to Syria, where the president also broke his word. He said if Assad used chemical weapons, that he would attack Assad. Now, I don't know if I would have threatened that as president, but he did, and then he didn't do it. And what's happened now? A huge civil war in Syria, where ISIS has taken over large portions of the country and using that as a recruitment and staging area. Then he had his plan to pull troops out of Afghanistan. He's pulled more and more troops out. The Taliban has gotten back more strength, and what happens? As soon as the Taliban gets more strength in certain sections of that country, Al-Qaeda is back and recruiting and training terrorists whose only goal will be to attack Americans. Now, luckily, Congress and the American people have convinced the president not to do what he originally planned to do, which was withdraw all troops from Afghanistan, so the Taliban could go back into complete control of that country, and we'd be just the same spot we were in 2001. It's an extraordinary thing that everything this country has worked so hard for in terms of keeping us safe, this president has frittered away in 7 years. And let me remind you something. It's not unusual for us to keep troops in other parts of the world. We still have troops in Korea. And the reason we have a small but important set of troops in Korea is we are still protecting the peace and stability that we brought there in the 1950s. My father was in the Army during that period of time. We're still maintaining the peace and the stability there. We still have troops in Europe, everybody, from the 1940s. Again, to try to keep peace and stability in a region that we spent so much money and so many lives trying to liberate. And so to keep some troops in Iraq and Afghanistan would have been the smart thing to do. And we're now going to pay the price for the president's short-sightedness and his misunderstanding. You know, I heard the president the other night say that the reason Americans are so anxious about terrorism now is because they watch too much cable news. He said that. He then figured out that that probably wasn't the right thing to say. So then he said, well, the reason that we have that anxiety is because cable news covers terrorism too much. And tried to blame the media then. I want to let you know, I know why you're anxious about terrorism. Because of the dead bodies in Paris and the dead bodies in San Bernardino. That's why we're anxious about it, Mr. President. You know, you got Hillary Clinton the other night, who wants to succeed him, saying at the Democratic debate in New Hampshire that we're exactly where we need to be on ISIS. Right? Now, see, I'm not going to call her Secretary Clinton anymore after that comment. I'm going to call her Secretary Happy Talk, because that's what she's become. She personifies what should be the slogan for the Obama administration. Do you believe me or your lying eyes? That's what they want. They don't want you to believe what you see. They want you to believe that what you see is wrong, what you feel is wrong, and that they're right. It's not the way to govern a nation. The government needs to be responsive to the people, not dictating to the people. We need to listen. I had a reporter from the Des Moines Register tonight interview me beforehand. He said, you know, these town hall meetings, you do more of them than anybody. You know, why? Where did this start? I said, it started when I was governor. And after about 6 months as governor, I realized that you could become very isolated in that job. You're in those black SUVs all the time. They bring you up to the back door of everything. I don't go into a front door any place anymore in New Jersey, right? They take you in the back door of every place. I've walked through every kitchen of every catering hall in New Jersey in the last 6 years, right? You don't live a real life. You know, I go on the weekends to pick up my dry cleaning. I got 3 troopers with me, like as if somebody's actually waiting at the dry cleaners to not take me out, you know? But that's today's world, right? So after 6 months or so as governor, I decided I need a way to get interaction from the people that I work for. I said, so let's start doing town hall meetings. Let's travel around the state. Well, I've now done 134 town hall meetings as governor inside New Jersey. And when I decided to run for president, he said, well, so you decided to do it in Iowa, New Hampshire too? I said, exactly the same way. If you go to a town hall meeting in New Jersey of mine, it looks exactly like this. And the fact is that it's because I think as a leader, I follow the advice that one of my political science professors gave me all the way back in college at the University of Delaware. He said to me, Chris, more than half of leadership is about listening. And I was 19 at the time, so I'm like, really? Listening? What's that? And he said to me, no. He said, listen, if you want to be a leader, you have to listen. If you listen to people, you'll know where people want to go. And then you'll have people who are willing to follow you. If you don't listen, people will not follow you. And then he was an old Southern gentleman. He was a funny guy. He said, and remember something, buddy? A leader without followers is just a guy out for a walk. And he said, you're in politics, you just want to be a guy out for a walk. Fact is, I do these because I want to listen and I want to learn. Learn about what's on your mind, learn about what's troubling your heart, learn about what your aspirations are, and learn about what you think our country needs to do to become everything that it can possibly be. President doesn't understand that. See, you can't listen when you're reading a teleprompter. You're reading the teleprompter. Right? You can't listen then, you know, and I fear that what's going on now in this country is that voters are angry and frustrated because they're not being listened to. They feel as if the country and their government has lost connection with each other. And there's only one way to fix that, and that is to do this. And so the reason I love Iowa and New Hampshire is because you all give us the chance to do this. You know, once we get past Iowa and New Hampshire, maybe South Carolina, it's going to be 4, 5, 6, 10 states in a week. And we're going to be bouncing in and out of airplanes and coming and giving speeches and shaking hands and doing some media interviews and getting on the plane and going someplace else. I've been coming here since 2010 for Governor Branstad, and for the Republicans in the state legislature, and for Steve King, and for Chuck Grassley, and for Joni Ernst, appearing at fundraisers and events for them for the last 6 years. And in the last 9 months, I've been coming here as a candidate for myself, which is much different. Much different. It's easy to ask for the vote for somebody else. Much harder to ask for it for yourself, at least for me. And so what we're going to do tonight is have a conversation about all the things that matter so much to our country. And you'll get my ideas about what kind of president I would be, and then you get to decide. You got 33 days. Last thing I'll tell you is one of the things I've really noticed about Iowans, they're very nice. Really nice folks you are. And when I first started coming here as a candidate, you know, it's almost like you guys have the manual, you know, that like the voter manual, you know, and these are the things you say to potential and presidential candidates. Welcome to Iowa. Thank you. Say, I found what you had to say very interesting. I don't know what that means exactly, but it sounds nice. And then you all say this to me, at least you have in the beginning, you're in my top 3. Right? Okay? Right? You're in my top 3. Right now, see, in April, May, and June, July, August, and September, October, and November, I was heartened by being in your top 3. Right? I thought that was a really good thing. Heck, we started off with 17 candidates. We're down to 12. Heck, you're in the top 3. All right. Now it's December 30th, and it's 33 days till the caucuses. I don't want to be in your top 3 anymore. I appreciate your kindness and your courtesy for putting me in the top 3. But I am here to become number 1 now. I'm here to win your support and win your confidence and win your vote on February 1st. So let's have some fun tonight and talk to each other. So there's only one rule in my town hall meetings in Iowa. I want you to know there are 4 rules for my town hall meetings in New Jersey. That'll tell you everything you need to know about the difference between New Jersey and Iowa. New Jersey, 4 rules. Iowa, 1 rule. The 1 rule in Iowa is you raise your hand and I call on you. And that's it. That's the only rule. Now, I know there are some people who come to Iowa running for president who they do town hall meetings, or what they call town hall meetings, and you have to write your question down. I don't know if you've been to any of these. You have to write your question down, and then you hand it to staff, and then the staff reads it, and they decide, is that a question the candidate likes? And if it is, they give it to the candidate, and if it's not, they don't. And then the candidate reads the question and then gives you the pre-prepared answer, and that's supposed to represent interaction with the candidate. Now, listen, it would be indiscreet of me to give the name of the candidate who does it that way. But her initials are Hillary Rodham Clinton. So that's not this kind of town hall. The town hall tonight is, you ask me whatever's on your mind, and you're going to get an answer. And one of the things that Jake said in leading into this is true. My daughter warned me this. My 19-year-old daughter, Sarah, who's a sophomore at Notre Dame, she came for some town hall meetings with me, and I said, so what'd you think? And she said, your answers are a little long. I said, thank you, honey. I appreciate that. You're going to get long answers from me tonight because I want you to know what I really think. Jake said I don't give you the 10-second soundbite. I don't, because I don't think that's useful. Heck, I can come up with something cute and funny to say in 30 seconds. I'm a politician. I can do it. I can give you that all night if you want, right? Something quippy, something really fun and cute and whatever. In 30 seconds, boom, on to the next question. That's not what you're here for. You didn't come out tonight to get something you could get with the unending TV commercials that you see on TV from all of us. That's not what you're here for. You're here to find out, what do I really think, so you can really evaluate what kind of candidate I am. So the answers may get a little long at times. Be patient, though, because if you listen, you're going to learn what kind of president I can be. And that's going to help you make your decision, I think, for whether you're going to caucus for me on February 1st. So raise them up. Who's got questions? Let's go to the lady all the way in the back. Let's start with you. You're standing up on something, or you're very tall. One or the other.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
My family and I have a small farm here in Iowa. The ag economy has gone down in the last year or two. I brought 4 20-something kids with me, and the economy, jobs, that's really what's top of mind. Can you talk about what you would do as president to improve
Listen,
that?
it's the biggest problem I think we have, there's really the 2 biggest problems we have in our economy right now is the tax system and the regulatory system. And it is a wet blanket on American economic growth. Last quarter, 1.5% GDP growth in this country. It's unacceptable. And it's done because of those two major wet blankets. So let's deal first with the tax code. If the folks in this room and neighbors and friends of yours have the sense that the tax code in America is rigged for the rich, it's because it is. The tax code in America has become rigged for the wealthy. And the reason for that is because they're the ones who can afford the lobbyists and the accountants and the lawyers to go to Washington and put all those special little deals in the tax code for them. And what it's done is made this such a specialized, narrow economy that we don't have the opportunity for growth. So here's what my suggestion and my plan is. And all these things, by the way, you can find on my website at chrischristie.com. So if tonight you go home and you're having a little trouble getting to sleep, go on chrischristie.com. Because while there's some nice pictures of me and the family and stuff, there is really detailed proposals. And so if you're interested in what I'm saying tonight and you want to see the real detail behind it, or if you're just having trouble going to sleep, either way, go to the website and it'll tell you. Here's what we're saying on taxes. Every one of the special interest loopholes and deductions in the tax code should be gotten rid of, except for 2. The home mortgage interest deduction and the charitable contribution deduction. These are the ones that real people use. We want to continue to encourage people to own homes, and we want to make it more affordable for them to do so. And secondly, we want people to support the charities of their choice. We want you to decide who are the best charities, local or national, that you think are helping the folks that are most in need in this country. And I want to encourage you to continue to do that, because the more we have nonprofits to do that, the less government needs to do that kind of thing. And I think that's a smart and good thing for our country. If we did those things and eliminated all the rest of them except for those 2, we could bring income tax rates down to 3 brackets. The highest bracket at 28%, which is where Ronald Reagan had it in 1986 when he did tax reform, and the lowest bracket being 8%. And you could do your taxes in 15 minutes. Here's how much you made, deduct how much you paid in mortgage interest, deduct how much you donated to charity, multiply times the bracket, write your check, send it, and be done in 15 minutes. And you keep more of your own money, and a little sidelight that would be very helpful and I think enjoyable to many of us, I could fire lots of IRS agents that we wouldn't need anymore, right? Because the tax code would be so simple. We need to do the same thing on the corporate side as well. We need to lower that rate to 25% from 35%. Right now, we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world at 35%. And what's happening? Corporations are leaving the United States. They're doing these corporate inversions, right? You just saw a big one. Allergan, an Irish pharmaceutical company, merged with Pfizer. And Pfizer's going to become an Irish company now. Why? Because they're avoiding onerous American taxes at 35%, and we're one of the only countries in the world that double taxes. Us in North Korea. Imagine. That's really something to strive for. To have a tax system for your companies like North Korea, that bastion of economic growth and vitality, right? Here's what happens. For a company like Pfizer, they sell pharmaceuticals in Great Britain. They pay taxes on the profits in Great Britain. Then they want to bring the net back to America. We tax them again. They say, well, wait a second, we already paid taxes in England on this. No, you're coming to America, you're going to pay taxes again. So you know what companies like that do? They never bring the money home. They leave it in England and every other country where they make money. And they get those foreign addresses, and then they don't have to pay taxes at all because they're not an American company. And so we need to change that. Stop the double taxation. And what I say is there's $2 trillion right now offshore and American companies are keeping overseas. I say to them, I'll give you a one-time chance to bring that money back to the United States, and I'll tax it at 8.75%. Because right now we're getting 35% of zero. Even a lawyer can figure out 30% of zero is zero. 8.75% of $2 trillion is a lot of money. What we would do with that money when it came into the government is that's what we'd use to rebuild infrastructure in this country. Our roads, our bridges, our tunnels, our mass transit, it's found money to us. So we wouldn't have to raise taxes on people to do it. And it would create $2 trillion of new revenue in companies here in America to create jobs in America. Last part is regulation. Last year, 2014, the Obama administration issued 81,000 pages of new federal regulation just in 2014. It's the most ever issued by an administration in the nation's history. Now, I don't know who reads all those pages. I sure as hell don't know who writes all of them. 81,000 pages. But what it does, that Obamacare, the EPA, they put all these regulations on folks so that now a small business like this one in Iowa, the Small Business Administration says that complying with federal regulation costs this business $10,000 per employee just to comply with regulation. And if you're a manufacturer in America, it costs you $34,000 per employee to comply with regulation. You wonder why we're not growing jobs? No employer wants to get above 50 employees anymore because then they got to deal with Obamacare. So we've got to strip away this regulation. I will make sure that Obamacare is repealed and replaced, for sure, when I'm president. But on the regulatory side, I'll do what I did in New Jersey, because we had a big problem in New Jersey. I had a liberal Democratic governor before me who was doing the same stuff. And I signed my first executive order was to absolutely prohibit any new regulation by any department or agency for 90 days. And then to send my lieutenant governor out around the state to hold meetings in public forums with Democrats from the legislature to hear from small business about what regulations were the most onerous, the most difficult, the most expensive, and the stupidest. Come to us with your list. We advertised it. I went out and spoke about it. Come with your list. At the end of our first year, we had gotten rid of 1/3 of all the regulation put in place by my predecessor. I'll do the same thing as president, except 90 days won't be enough. We'll need 180 days. The federal government's a lot bigger. And we'll send the vice president out to do the same thing. And then with one stroke of a pen, get rid of this regulation. This will help small business in this country, which is where 70% of the jobs come from, to stop feeling weighted down by government regulation and government intervention. That's going to really spur growth in this country. The changes to the tax system and the changes to the regulatory system will allow people to no longer feel like the government is on their back 24/7 and allow them to grow their businesses in a way where they want to create jobs. They want to get bigger than 50 employees. They want to do great things because they can make money doing it. Right now, it costs them money to do it. That's the way we're going to change this economy, is to get the government out of the way of the American people, because when the American people have been unleashed with their ingenuity and the depth of their work ethic, we have always been the greatest economy in the world, and will continue to be if we get the government out of picking winners and losers. So that's what we do with that. All right. Yes, ma'am, right back there. Yes, ma'am. Here you go, you're getting a microphone too.
My mom is 67 years old and has Alzheimer's, and my dad is her caregiver. She's had it for about 4 years, and I wondered, if you're elected president, what would you do to help, like funding for research and for the caregivers too?
Sure. I'll talk about both caregiving, and in caregiving I'll talk about what we've done in New Jersey, which I think could be a model for the rest of the country. And then I'll talk about finding a cure and treatment. On the caregiving side, the model we've moved to in New Jersey for people who are older and have those type of chronic illnesses is we are encouraging people to stay home and to have, care given to them at home by professionals there, and moving away from sending people to institutions. It's dehumanizing for many. Now, there's some people whose problems are so profound medically that they need to be in an institution to be taken care of. So we'll always have nursing homes to take care of those folks. But we're institutionalizing too many people. And people feel more comfortable, more at ease at home, surrounded by familiar things. And as these chronic diseases progress, being surrounded by those familiar things is helpful. And we're finding that it could be cost effective too. And so we've moved to a model where it's much more at-home care that's being given wherever it's possible. And that also helps the families. Having to get in your car and go to an institution somewhere to go and visit your loved one, it's not the same. And it disrupts your life in a way that's profound. And so we've moved much more towards a home care model in New Jersey, both through what we do with state funds and what we do through Medicaid. And I think it's what we need to be doing much more of in this country to make people feel more comfortable and to keep families together. Second, we're spending an enormous amount on health care in this country, right? And the four biggest diseases that are driving health care expense at end of life are heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and Alzheimer's. Yet this president, last year in his budget, only increased the budget for the National Institutes of Health by 0.1% and cut the funding for the National Science Foundation by 4.3%. This is penny wise and pound foolish in my view. If we don't find effective treatments or cures to those four major diseases, they bankrupt people at the end of their lives, and they really bankrupt the government. We're spending enormous amounts of money on those four diseases. If we spent money up front, partnering with the private sector through the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation to find treatments and cures to those four diseases, we would not only increase quality of life for folks like your mom and others who have those other diseases, but also we would decrease the amount we're spending on the back end at end-of-life care and treatment. If people die of natural causes, they are much less expensive at the end of their life than if we are treating them with the chronic diseases and the symptoms that come from those diseases, like Alzheimer's, like diabetes, like cancer, and like heart disease. We've made great progress on heart disease. We have more to go, but we've made great progress there. But the other three, we have not made the kind of progress that we can make. Cancer obviously is being treated better today than it has been at other times in our country's history. But still, 1 out of every 2 people wind up having cancer at one time in their life. We need to make it a chronic treatable disease. And we can. And in some places, in some types of cancer, we are. We need to do that across the board. So I believe in greater investment in those two agencies because they produce results. And they can partner with the private sector. And the money we invest in the government, we can leverage. And the private sector puts even more money in research and development. So that's the ideas I have about how we would deal with this as we move forward if I were to become president of the United States. Yes, ma'am, right here.
Governor Christie, rural areas of Iowa, such as Washington County, where you've probably been, it's just south of Iowa City.
Yes, ma'am.
They're leading in the installation of solar on farms and rural businesses so they can save money. My question is, do you support solar energy initiatives? And if so, how do you propose to help the rural Iowa economy with this kind of technology?
Well, this is a great question for a guy from New Jersey. You might not believe that. This is a great question for a guy from New Jersey. Now, you can't do it tonight at Mickey's, but maybe later in the week, if you happen to find yourself at another bar, this is going to be a way you're going to drink for free. Okay? You're going to ask the person sitting next to you, hey, I bet you a drink that you can't name the top 3 solar energy producing states in America. And the great thing about this is it's a total setup, because the first 2 are easy, right? Arizona and California. Sure, they got more sunshine than anybody else, and you would expect that. Number 3 is New Jersey. They're never going to guess. Ever going to guess it's New Jersey. Why is it New Jersey? Because we have invested with the private sector, partnered with the private sector, to make solar energy affordable in our state. Now, I look at what you're doing here in Iowa right now, and there's a significant amount of investment going on in wind energy as well. And as I drive in all different parts of the state, I see wind turbines everywhere. That's great for Iowa. And wind energy is a great idea for Iowa because of the topography and because of the amount of land that you have. If we tried to put on-land wind turbines in New Jersey, in a state that's this big, with 8.9 million people stuffed in this sausage, right? We would not only have dead birds, we'd have dead people. But solar is a much more compact energy-producing process. And so we have them in New Jersey now on the tops of shopping malls, on the tops of manufacturing plants, on the tops of parking garages, on the tops of homes. And with all that investment in the private sector, we've created now the 3rd largest solar producing state in America. What I think we should be doing is let each state make these determinations on their own. Federal government should encourage people to use renewable energy, whether it's our renewable biofuels and ethanol that we have here, wind energy, solar energy. If you can make it affordable for people here, and you can do it, state governments can do it, we've done it, in partnership with the private sector, people will use it. People will use renewable energy if it's affordable and effective. And so I absolutely, as president, would encourage this because I've done it in New Jersey. You know, the other thing we got to think about in this country in terms of energy is nuclear. 53% of New Jersey's electricity is generated by nuclear power. 53%. In the most densely populated state in America. We've operated it safely for 4 decades. 3 Mile Island was a long time ago, everybody. We need to get over it. We can operate this safely, and it doesn't contribute to polluting our environment, and it is a safe, reliable source of energy. So my point as president would be, I want a broad portfolio, not dictated by the federal government, but by each state deciding, here's what's best for us. Here's what's affordable for us. Here's what makes sense given where we live, what our population is, and what our needs are from an energy perspective. And so I would be a big supporter of solar in Iowa, the way I'm a big supporter of solar in New Jersey, not from a philosophical perspective, but because it works. Let us invest our limited resources in things that actually work, and not because we're trying to pursue some philosophy. My philosophy is I want government to work for you, and I want to spend as little of your money as I possibly have to. And I think we can do it this way, and I think it's a great idea, but it's got to work for here. Federal government shouldn't be telling you to do it. That should come from the state government and from the citizens wanting to do things like that because it's cost effective, it's the right thing to do. Let me turn back this way again. Yes, sir, I'll give you mine.
Thank you, Governor. After spending a couple all-expense-paid trips to Afghanistan, I want to touch on your point earlier about foreign policy. The first time I was there, I witnessed their first ever election, and I watched people walk miles through unbelievable terrain to vote at rates that embarrass our participation rates here. 5 years later, the second time I was back there, it was a different place and not in a good way. So I agree with your point that there's a duration that we have to expect a presence. But what's your message for those in the military and, quite frankly, the general population for that kind of commitment?
My message, first off, to you and to others who have served is thank you, because you made this possible. And your sacrifice is, for many people in this country, not something they can even imagine. My message is consider the alternatives. We're watching it, right? So this president, has pursued a non-interventionist foreign policy. And he pulled back to Fortress America and not get involved. He thinks that America was the cause of violence in the world. He thinks America is why these things are happening. What we're now seeing is when America pulls back in a very significant way, that bad actors fill that vacuum. So the problem is that we're faced with a series of bad choices. Sometimes life confronts us with that. Sometimes there isn't a perfect choice to make. We have to pick among difficult choices. And so here's the choice we have now. We have ISIS doing what it's doing, and it's spreading its hate and its violence to all parts of the world, including here. We either have to, I think we have to do two things. The first is we have to raise our homeland security significantly. You know, when Senator Paul and Senator Cruz and the president agreed this summer to pull back tools from our intelligence community to help connect the dots to intervene before an attack happens, they were wrong. I said they were wrong back then, and the reason I knew they were wrong was because I've done this. Remember that I spent 7 years as a federal prosecutor before I became governor. I was named, U.S. Attorney by President George W. Bush on September 10th, 2001. And the next day, that job changed significantly from what it had been the day I accepted it. I spent 7 years of my life chasing terrorists, investigating them, prosecuting them, and putting them in jail. I know how to use these tools. No one's going to have to teach me when I get to the Oval Office. And so the fact is that we need a president who understands that again, how to protect the homeland. Second, then, we need to form coalitions like we did in the first Gulf War. Because Europe now knows it's under attack from ISIS. It's seen the carnage in their streets. The folks in the Middle East, our Sunni Arab allies, already know it. And if you go to Jordan and they're overrun, you know now the fourth largest city in Jordan is a refugee camp. It's the fourth largest city in Jordan. We need to bring everybody together and say, we have to work together. This cannot be just America. So what I'd say to Americans is, if we don't want to have to shoulder this burden by ourselves, and we should not have to, it's not right to our country, it's not right to our citizens, and it's not right to our military who we asked to go over there and do this job, then you've got to empower the president to go over and form these coalitions and form these alliances, and to stand by those alliances even if you get a little skittish. Because what those folks are worried about is the first time a president's poll numbers go down, they cut and run. And then they're left holding the bag, and so they don't want to be with us anymore. So my approach to this would be, we cannot do this on our own, but we cannot ignore it. Because ignoring it will just bring it to our doorstep. And listen, everybody, if a Center for the Developmentally Disabled in San Bernardino, California, is a target for a terrorist attack, that means any place in America is a target for a terrorist attack. And so those are the tough choices we have to make. But as president, my position on this would be, we cannot do it alone. We've got to do it in conjunction. That means hard work by me and our diplomats to bring people around. And, you know, it's always easier just to say, you go, we'll do it ourselves. It's too much of a burden to place on our soldiers. It's too much of a burden to place on the American people. We need to do it in conjunction with folks, and we need to protect the homeland first and foremost. And until we do that, we shouldn't be worried about anything else. Protect home first. So it's my answer on that, and thanks again for your service. I appreciate it. Other questions? Yes, ma'am, right there. And someone's going to come to you with a microphone. Here, he's making his way. There it is.
Mr. Christie, I'd like to thank you for coming to Waukee.
Thank you.
You're down in the polls. How?
Really?
Yeah, a little bit. How do we that enjoy listening to everything you say and we want to support everything you say, How do we fight for you? How do we get you where you need to be?
Well,
Do we want to be there with you?
good. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I just saw a poll recently that says that 2/3 of Iowa voters even haven't made up their mind yet or are willing to change their mind. That's 2/3 with 33 days to go. That means there is a lot of time to do what needs to be done here. A lot of time. But the best way for you to help is what you're doing tonight. It's not only to be here to listen to me, but then you can go to your neighbors and your friends and say to them, I've met the guy. You didn't just read about him in the newspaper or see a commercial on TV. I've met him. I've looked him in the eye. And I'm with him. And I want you to be with him too. And encourage them to come. I'm going to be here a lot in the next 33 days. Encourage them to come and see me and ask me questions. The great thing about the Iowa caucuses are that, you know, it's probably going to be, if it's typical of the last few cycles, about 120,000 Republicans are going to caucus across this state. And you can have a material effect on that. It's only 120,000. And so I've always found in my life that the only thing that brings you success, the only thing that is a consistent in every person I've ever seen who's been successful at any endeavor in life is hard work. Now, I've done 6 town hall meetings in the last 24 hours. Man, that's hard work. But that's what gets rewarded by Iowans. That's what gets rewarded by citizens in New Hampshire. It's not who's ahead in the polls on December 30th. So I remember many years ago, Howard Dean was ahead in the polls. We're not opening the Howard Dean Presidential Library anytime soon, are we? Right? I mean, I remember lots of different folks who have been in front here on December 30th. Here's what I feel. Look at all of you here tonight. Man, this didn't happen to me in July when I came here. I guarantee you that. Something's happening. And you see it happening in New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, I'm now second in the polls. I'm second in the polls in New Hampshire. So, you know, something's happening. And I think it's that people are actually getting to know me, and I'm being rewarded for my ideas and my hard work. So that's what we need to do. And that's why Iowa should always be the first in the nation caucus, and why New Hampshire should always be the first in the nation primary. Because you folks take it seriously. You show up, you work, you listen, and you give all of us a chance, regardless of what your preconceived notions about any of us might be on the way in. And that's what's most encouraging to me and to Mary Pat about this process, is we've gotten to know people now in Iowa. We've gotten to make friends here in Iowa. People who have signed on and become supporters and who are working hard. You're the ones with me who are going to make a difference in the next 33 days. So just by you being here, you're making a difference. And when you leave here, if you leave here with a positive attitude and you really feel strongly, you can turn people around. And by the way, different than the primary system, you're caucusing. You go into that room that night, you're going to change minds. You can talk to people there that night who think maybe they're coming in to vote for one person, and all of a sudden they talk to you for a couple minutes and go, you know, maybe I'm going to vote for your guy. You all can control this process. And I'm going to do everything I can to give you as many soldiers in our Army as we can muster between now and February 1st. And you know what? When you earn that vote, when it's not just based on reputation or something you read in the paper, but it comes this way and you earn it, I don't care if it's snowing that night. I'm sure it will be. But I don't care if it's snowing that night. You're going. You're going to caucus for me on February 1st, no matter how much it's snowing out. Our supporters are committed, dedicated folks. You know, because they're not supporting somebody to become entertainer-in-chief. They're supporting somebody to think they can be commander-in-chief. And so that's the way we can do it, and that's the way we will do it on February 1st here. Yes, sir, right there. Yeah, probably wait for a microphone because I want everybody to hear you.
Thank you.
Sure.
You and I spoke at a rather hot and steamy garage at Des Moines Area Community College last summer.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes. And the fans were helped, but not much.
Not much. They just made a lot of noise.
We talked about veterans issues briefly there, and I'm glad to see another one of my fellow veterans here tonight asking questions of you. I have a two-part question. Number one, there's been a lot of discussion about the problems within the VA healthcare system, the wait times, the poor quality of care, the cost of care. Cost of care at a VA is actually more than it is at a civilian hospital. And, you know, some of the other things that need to be done. I want to know what you will do to help, you know, reform the VA system, maybe look at what Concerned Veterans for America, what their proposal is, that kind of thing. The second, you and I talked about this also, is the pensions that go to disabled veterans. Because if you walk into a VA hospital, look around the waiting rooms, you see a rather sad-looking lot there. They're my fellow vets, the ones that are 100% disabled. They're sitting around there, they're waiting for their care. The thing is, the pensions that they receive from VA for being 100% disabled are below the poverty line. There's a base number they use to figure what a veteran's pension is. That base number is $176. I'm working with some colleagues of mine. I will be in D.C. Probably in January, February, working on actually getting the bill drafted. Senator Ernst is going to help me with it, to take that $176 number and take it to $590. As president, would you sign the bill? Because it'll probably be ready about the time you're inaugurated.
Well, if you do your job, it will be.
Yeah. Hey, I am a lobbyist.
Oh, yeah, listen, hey, I'm going to answer your first question and then your second one. On the first one, we have a short-term solution and a long-term solution to the VA problem. And I want you to remember that Secretary Happy Talk says there's no crisis at the VA. Another version of her Happy Talk. No crisis at the VA, according to Secretary Happy Talk, okay? So another moment where there's something right in front of your face, you can see it, it's plain as day, and yet she denies it because to admit it would mean that in 7 years, the administration she was a part of did nothing to help solve it. In the short term, what we need to do is every veteran in this country should take their veterans card and be able to go to any health care provider, anywhere in their state, and be able to get their health care.
They've already started that.
They started, but it's got problems. I mean, let's get the restrictions off it and the pre-clearance and all the rest of it, because this is a short-term fix, not the long-term fix. And in the short term, vets, like the guys you're talking about, should not be sitting in veterans hospitals waiting days and days and days for their health care, or having to go home and drive back and wait weeks. That's just unacceptable. We made a promise to them. The promise was, you serve your country faithfully and loyally, we will take care of your health care for the rest of your life. We're not meeting that promise, and we need to. And it's a disgrace as a country that we're not. Secondly, we have to fix the VA system. It cannot be just abandoned. There's too much expertise in the VA system to let it go. Everything from prosthetics to mental health treatment. There's a lot of good people in the VA system who care about the vets and want to provide them with good care. My idea is that I would go as president to the best health care hospital CEO in the country and say to them, your country needs you. I want you to leave this system, whether it's the Mayo Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic. Pick whichever one is the best, performing the best. You go to that CEO and say, this is a hospital system now. The VA no longer needs to be run by generals or admirals. The VA needs to be run by a healthcare professional who will whip this system back into shape and run it like it's a private sector system and bring some of those efficiencies and the effectiveness and the care to detail with that issue. So that's what I would do to fix the VA system, because the president is not going to fix it by himself. He needs to get people who know what they're doing to fix this system and respond to the needs of vets. And as to the veterans, the disability pensions, again, that's a disgrace that this country should not be standing for. We are asking people under the current set of circumstances to have multiple deployments of greater length that are making them come back here with greater injuries, both mental and physical. And so to have a veteran live below the poverty level is something that I think most people in this room would not even know is happening and can't believe is happening. But he's right, it is. And we can't have that. We just can't have it. And I don't think the American people would hesitate for a moment to pay to make sure that someone who became 100% disabled in service of their country can have a livable wage for the rest of their lives. And so, yeah, you do your work and get it on my desk, I'll sign it. All right? Yes, I'll give you mine.
One of the frustrations I have is how Congress is kind of set one way and the president's at, and there's no interaction. And my feeling is, and I don't know what you would do, my feeling is the president should bring the leaders every week up to his office and sit down with them, and we're going to get things done, and knowing that you're not going to get everything you want. And
Yeah, well, listen, I'm an expert at this because I'm a Republican governor in a Democratic state with a Democratic legislature. Every minute of every day that I've been governor of New Jersey, I've had a Democratic legislature, and by the way, not close. 24-16 in the Senate, 48-32 in the lower house. So I wake up every morning knowing I'm not getting everything I want. Right? I mean, let me tell you, these folks in the legislature don't wake up in the morning and say, geez, how can I make the governor happy today? Right? Not the way it works. But let me tell you something else. It's a good story. When I got elected governor, I'd been a prosecutor for 7 years. I'd never been in state government at all, at any level. And so I called one of the former governors, Governor Tom Kean, who later became chairman of the 9/11 Commission. And Governor Kean was a two-term Republican governor of New Jersey who had dealt for 6 of his 8 years with a completely Democratic legislature. So I said, Governor, I want to know how to do this the right way. Can I sit with you and have some tutoring sessions on how to do this the right way? He said, sure, absolutely. So I started going to his office. The first meeting, he said, Chris, this is the way it's going to work. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to give me answers, and then I'm going to critique your answers. I said, okay, Governor, sure. So first question was, who's your best friend? I said, Mary Pat. He said, not anymore. I said, not anymore? He said, no. Your new best friend is going to be the Senate president. You're going to do everything you can every day to make him your best friend. You're going to find out what he likes, and you're going to do it with him. He said, you're going to find out the things he's concerned about. You're going to try to be supportive of it. He said, you're going to meet with him anytime he's in the State House. And he said, you're going to take his phone call anytime he calls. Now, the president of the Senate in New Jersey has been the same guy my entire term. He's a guy named Steve Sweeney. He is the president of the Iron Workers Local. Not a shy and retiring character. So imagine the two of us, right? But I will tell you, that was the best advice I've ever gotten. Because every time Steve's in the State House and I'm there, we sit with each other and we talk. We talk on the phone regularly. We've gone out for dinner together. We go out for drinks together. I know his wife, Patty, and his 2 children. He knows Mary Pat and I 4 children. The reason that's important is, you know, when you get to know folks like that, it's a lot harder to make them evil. You see him as a father and a husband. You see him in his regular life. And what we do in Congress right now is everybody has these dueling press conferences. No one ever talks to each other. The place I'd like to ban when I'm president is that spot on Capitol Hill where they all stand behind those microphones and say awful things about each other. Then they rotate out and the next party comes in and they say awful things about the people who just were there. It's exactly what you're talking about. What I've done in New Jersey is we have been able to work together. Now, here's the secret, guys. It means compromise. It means that you have to allow me to compromise. Not on things that are monumentally principled issues. For instance, I have now vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history. American history. Now, I got to thank my legislature for that, because if they didn't send them to me, I wouldn't be able to veto them. But I vetoed every one of them. I told them in the beginning that we are one of the most overtaxed states in America, and I am not going to sign a tax increase under any circumstances. But when you draw a line on something like that, you got to be willing to give on some other stuff, right? And so we've worked together. And the only way to do this is to develop personal relationships. And that takes time. I tease my wife all the time that as governor, I spend more time with people I can't stand than I can count. I mean, people I really don't agree with on anything, and candidly, some of them that I don't like. But I asked for this job. And you know what? When you're the governor, you're the only person who can make this happen. It's the same way with the president. You know? Of course. Of course, he's high and mighty. You know, and that's easy to do when you're in the White House, right? That's probably, I'm, you know, I don't know that yet, but it's probably a pretty big ego trip, right? President of the United States, you know, when they play a special song for you when you walk in the room, I suspect that might affect the ego a little bit, right? So here's the thing. You know, you have to remember what your job is. Your job is to govern. That's the only thing you send me there for. I don't make anything. I don't make anything. I got to make government work. That's the only thing, that's the only job I have. And so that means I got to do things that I don't want to do sometimes. Believe me, I love Steve Sweeney. We're friends. He calls me some awful things. You know, you've been in New Jersey. I mean, some really awful things he calls me. But whenever we get in the room together, we make nice, and we know we got to deal with each other. But, you know, when he's called me at times at 11 or 11:30 at night because he's upset about something, and I'm laying in bed, and that phone is buzzing on my nightstand, and I look, and Mary Pat's laying next to me. She goes, "Who is it?" You know? I'm like, "It's our friend Steve," you know? I want to hit ignore, but I take the call, right? That's the spirit we need again from the president. We need a president who does not believe that you're above the whole thing, but that you're an integral part of it. And by the way, every one of those guys and women, whether they're a senator or a member of the House, you have the greatest home field advantage in the world. I see it as governor. When I bring some of these folks into the governor's office at the State House, man, they come in, they sit down, right? It's great. You got to watch this. They sit down, and you're supposed to be talking to me, right? But right in the beginning, you see them going, Woodrow Wilson sat here, huh? Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. They're looking around. All of them then leave the room, go to the bathroom, look in the mirror, and they could swear they see the next governor. Right? You have a huge home field advantage. And the presidency, forget it. You get them in the Oval Office. If you can't persuade somebody in the Oval Office, if you can't be charming enough to bring them around even a little bit in the Oval Office, get out of this business. Right? So, but you got to spend the time to do it. So here's my commitment to you. I'm going to spend every minute that I need to build those relationships. Because if you don't have a relationship with Congress, you cannot govern. And if you cannot govern, the country cannot move forward. And so that's what I'll do. That's what I've done as governor. Yes, sir. Right here.
So to get to be president, you're going to have to attract young voters and minority voters. What do you need to do to reach them, and how will you do it?
You have to campaign in places where you're uncomfortable. Right? As a Republican candidate, I should not go to another Chamber of Commerce lunch. Okay? I mean, seriously, they're voting for me. If I'm the Republican nominee for President of the United States, there is no reason to go to the Chamber. Go once, right? Go once to say thank you. They give you a standing ovation on the way in, a couple of standing ovations during your speech, standing ovation on the way out. Great for the ego. Get out and then go to work. Let me tell you how I did it in New Jersey. Because remember what New Jersey is. There's a Jersey girl in the front row here. And you know what this is like. There are 750,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans in New Jersey. We have not elected a Republican to the United States Senate in 43 years. It's the longest streak of any state in America not to elect a Republican to the U.S. Senate. Before I got elected in 2009, we hadn't elected a Republican to anything statewide in 12 years. So this is not what we would call fertile ground necessarily. So what do? What I did was I went out and campaigned in places where I was uncomfortable. I went to African-American churches. And when you go to African-American churches, I'll tell you a story. One of the first times I went in 2009 when I was running for governor the first time, I was invited to an African-American church in East Orange, New Jersey. And I started speaking, and there was an elegant, older African-American woman sitting in the front row. She had a big, beautiful hat on. She was dressed to the nines. She looked great. And I started to speak. And I mean, I was a minute and a half into my talk. This is what I saw. She went like this. I kept talking. You know, I just tried to ignore her. She then, after about another 2 or 3 minutes, she was still shaking her nose. She was going, liar, liar, right? Elegant woman. Called me a liar right to my face in the front row, front pew at church. I'm the invited guest, right? But you shouldn't be surprised because she hadn't seen a Republican for years. For years, no Republican had stepped foot in that church. So everything she knew about Republicans is what she heard from Democrats. Not good, right? I went into Hispanic neighborhoods and went store to store in Hispanic neighborhoods, business to business. And when you go in there, don't go in with a 10-point plan, please. Go in and shut up and listen. Listen to what they're frustrated about. Listen to what they're angry about. Third or fourth visit, you can come back with a plan, but not the first few times. And you got to get ready for the fact that they're not going to hug you. They're not going to welcome you with open arms because, I'll tell you one other story now from the 2013 campaign when I was running for re-election. I went to Orange, New Jersey. It's next door to East Orange. It's west of East Orange. And we're very creative in New Jersey. And the Democratic mayor, African-American, endorsed me for re-election. And he said, but the one condition is you have to come and campaign in Orange. Okay, so I went. I got out of the car, and the unions, the teachers' union, had sent 2 busloads of people to protest. And they were chanting, Christie, go home. I'm like, I'm in Jersey. Where the hell am I supposed to go? But, you know, there we go. So they're chanting all this stuff, and I met 2 different women. First woman, older African-American woman. I get out of the car, and she comes up to me. She says, Governor, she introduced herself, gave me her name, and she said, I just want to thank you for coming to Orange. I said, well, thank you, ma'am. We shook hands. That was it. She walked away. The press swarmed over to her, and they asked her, what'd you say to the governor? She said, I just thanked him for coming to Orange. They said, well, did you vote for the governor in 2009? She goes, no, I voted for Governor Corzine. Okay, well, who are you voting for in 2013, if you don't mind us asking? She goes, I'm voting for Governor Christie. And they said, well, why are you voting for Governor Christie? And she said, because I've lived here for 40 years. And she said, and that's the first white Republican I've seen on this street in my life. Like, showing up matters. It matters. It's a sign of respect. It allows people to listen. You don't show up, it's not going to happen. The second woman I met, I got out of the car. She had a huge button on her lapel with my face and the International No sign over it. So I firmly put her in the undecided camp. And so she comes up to me, she goes, you're the problem. You're the problem. And she's yelling at me, pointing her finger at me. And I said, why am I the problem? She said, you're the problem. You know why you're the problem. I said, no, I really don't know why I'm the problem. I said, but how about this? I'm walking 10 blocks this way and 10 blocks back. Why don't you walk with me and you could tell me why I'm the problem? And I put my arm around her, and we started walking. And she started griping about things, and I started answering her back. And she stayed with me the whole 10 blocks up and the whole 10 blocks back. And we were going in and out of businesses, and I was meeting people and campaigning with the mayor, and the mayor was looking at me like, what are you doing with this woman? And so finally, we got back to the car. And we had had a really good conversation by this point. And she said to me, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm going to vote for you. And I said to her, no, you're not. Like we had a nice conversation and everything, but you're not voting for me, so don't lie to me. And she said, no, I mean, I'm going to vote for you. And I said, no, you're not. I don't believe you. And so she said to me, how can I prove it to you? And I said, give me the button. So she took the button off and she gave it to me. It's one of my most prized possessions from the 2013 re-election campaign. I have this button with my International No sign over my face. You got to show up. Now, what happened in that 2013 campaign? As a Republican who governed for 4 years, I got 61% of the vote for re-election. I won the Hispanic vote in New Jersey, 51% of the Hispanic vote. We won the Hispanic vote in New Jersey. I got 22% of the African American vote, up from 9% 4 years earlier. And in a race against a female opponent, who was an 18-year Democrat state senator, we won 57% of the female vote. You know, the fact is that this business is complex, but not complicated, right? You just have to work. And you got to listen. And people just want to be treated with respect. And so you need to be smart about what you say and how you say it, the tone of what you say, and you got to go and show people the respect that they deserve. If you think about it, it's no different than this process, right? Iowans do not like people who come in here on a private airplane, land, give a speech in some rally, and then leave. They're like, okay, that's fine, but like, when are we going to see you at Mickey's? All right? Like, when are you going to do that, right? When are you going to serve alcohol from behind the bar at the state fair? When are you going to come to my kids' school? When, like, that's what you want. Why is that important? It's a sign of respect. It's a sign from me to you that your vote matters to me, that your problems matter to me. And when I come there and I listen, that's what makes the difference. And here's what we've got to stop worrying about. Young people are no different on that score. African Americans are no different on that score. Hispanic Americans, Muslim Americans, they're no different. They want to be shown respect by their leaders, and they want to be listened to. And then they want a leader who's going to actually govern and not just pontificate. It's not complicated, everybody. It's complex, but it's not complicated. And the same reason you demand this interaction from us to earn your vote is the same reason any other American wants to try to have attention at whatever level they can get it to earn their vote. That's what I'll do. I'll campaign in places that are uncomfortable. And then the last piece is this. When I get up on that stage next September and I'm standing across from Hillary Clinton, okay, she'll know she's in a fight. There's not going to be any doubt in her mind when we walk across that stage and we shake hands with each other and we get behind those podiums. She's not going to think she's got some kid over there who's, you know, going to the first rodeo. She's not going to think that she's got some guy who's out of touch with people, who doesn't know how to relate to people, who she can, you know, run over. And she's going to know that no matter how much mud she throws in my direction, I've been in neck-deep mud, everybody, and I've gotten out of it. And so the other thing you got to know in this business is you got to be a fighter. You cannot sit back and wait for it to come to you. You got to go get it. And when Hillary Clinton's on that side of the stage, you're not going to want an amateur on the other side. You're going to want somebody who she looks across at and says, I'm going to try to get away with as much as I can, but it may not be as much as I'd like. That's the kind of person you want on that stage. Someone who's tested and who is ready and has been through what I've been through in New Jersey. Because it's not easy, everybody. I mean, I lovingly call it an unruly place to govern, but it's all you can handle. But you know what? It's made me ready for this. That's the way we're going to win this thing. You watch. That's the way we're going to do it. All right. That young man in the blue coat right there has got a question, and you got a microphone right behind you, brother.
Well, my question is, what are you going to do about global terrorism?
Global terrorism. Well, there's a few things we've got to do about it. And what's your name, by the way?
Christian.
Christian. Almost perfect. All right, Christian. The first thing is that you need to understand that these folks who are terrorists, that they want, more than anything else, to do harm to us. It doesn't make sense. It's not right. It's not fair. We haven't done anything to deserve that treatment, but we need to understand that that's what's happening. And so it'd be like anything else. It'd be like if someone was trying to come up to you at school and do you harm. You're not looking for a fight with anybody. You don't look like the kind of guy who's looking for a fight with anybody. But somebody's going to come up and try to hurt you or hurt your brother or sister or hurt a friend of yours, you're going to stand up and make sure that doesn't happen. So the first thing we have to do with these terrorists is make sure they understand that America is going to stand up and fight them. We're not going to be on the receiving end of this, and we're not going to take it sitting down. And we need a president who understands how to do that and do it smart. Second, you know, the guy who comes up to you at school every day and tries to pick on you, well, man, if you show up at his house one day and you say, hey, listen, I want to tell you something. Don't come back to my house or don't come back to my classroom again and give me a hard time, or I'll show up here. All of a sudden, it's a whole different thing. You know, when you show people that you're willing to fight them wherever you need to fight them, then they also have a different level of respect for you. And so we can't just stay here and wait to be attacked. We've got to go over there and make sure they understand, if you're going to bring the fight to us, we're going to bring it to you too. And then the last thing is that we have to understand that the people who are doing this to us don't represent all of the people of their religion. It's just not true. You know, there's a difference between bad people and good people. You know that. You've learned it already. We can't paint everybody with the same brush. We got to be smart about this. The people who mean to do us harm, we need to do harm right back at them, and we need to do it aggressively and strongly and directly and without compromise. But it doesn't mean that we need to take a shot at everybody, all right? Just like you wouldn't. So that's the way we go at it, Christian. That's the way we'll do it. All right. Yes, sir, right through there. He's coming right with you, right there with the microphone for you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We have $19 trillion in debt in this country.
Yes, we do.
Maybe our second biggest threat besides terrorism to our nation's well-being. What's your plan?
Plan is this. First off, let's remember how we got there and how quickly it can happen to you, right? This president has run up more debt than all of his predecessors combined. He has run up more debt than George Washington to George W. Bush combined. This can happen to us really quickly and has happened to us really quickly. There's no easy answer to this. None. And we're not going to cut our way out of it alone. All right, so first, I dealt with a big deficit problem in New Jersey when I got there. We had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget. That was a tough way to start. We sat down and we cut 800 programs out of the state budget. And let me tell you, it was no fun. And every one of those programs had a constituency. Every one of them. You know, so like you say to me, what are we going to do about the debt? And I'd say, well, I'm going to cut this program. And you say, well, you know, Governor, wait a second. That's program one is one I actually use and I think is very worthwhile. So would you leave that one? And there's more over there. Go look over there. You got to ignore that noise. You have to go through, you're selected to lead, and you've got to make decisions about where spending no longer makes sense. Second, we've got to reform entitlements in this country. 71 cents of every dollar we spend is on entitlements and debt service. Hear that number. 71 cents of every dollar is on entitlements or debt service. They used to ask Willie Sutton why he robs banks. He said, because that's where the money is. If we're going to deal with deficit and debt, we got to reform entitlements. And I have a 12-point plan on the website that's scored to save over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. We need to do it. And remember this about this race. I am still the only candidate who has put forward a entitlement reform plan. The only one. I put it out in April. And I'm still waiting for one of them, any of them, to come forward with a real detailed plan on how to fix this problem. Because if you don't fix the 71-cent problem, why are you even arguing over the 29 cents problem? Right? And we got to belly up to the bar here, everybody, and we got to do what needs to be done. Because otherwise, Social Security will be insolvent in 8 years. 8 years. This is not the next generation's problem. This is our problem. And we need to fix it. The last piece is you have to grow the economy at a much higher rate. The debt problem, as opposed to the deficit problem, which is more manageable, the debt problem is an accordion. If you just push on one side, you're not going to close the problem. You got to push on both sides, cutting spending and growing the economy. Last thing is, I'm not going to fix the problem. If I'm president for 8 years, I'm not going to fix the problem. Despite whatever great efforts I'll put in and how successful I am, it's too big a problem for one president to fix. So anybody comes in here and tells you that they're going to fix the debt problem in 8 years, kick them out. They're lying to you. They're singing a song to you that makes no sense. Think about it. $19 trillion. Our annual budget is about $3 trillion. So just think about the numbers. This is going to take a while for us to fix. But if we're making progress towards it and we're helping to fix it, then we hand it off to the next guy or woman and you hope that they do the same thing. But that's the way you do it. You got to go where the money is spent, you got to cut other programs, and you got to grow the economy. If you do those three things, you got a chance at chipping away at this problem. If you don't, you're going to bury this country. And you're right. It is now a national security issue because it's preventing us from doing things that we need to do because we're in debt, you know, up past our neck. So that's what I would do. Other questions? Yes, sir, right over there.
So about 2 weeks ago, the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act was passed, or basically slipped into the bill that they passed, the budget bill 2 weeks ago. Where do you draw the line on personal privacy and national security?
Listen, I think it's a false choice to think that you can't have both. But what I will tell you is that I'm really concerned about the encryption that's going on. The FBI director is concerned about it too, that Apple is doing, and that Facebook and Google and other folks are doing. Law enforcement's got to have a way to figure out what these folks are doing. And we cannot have completely dark corners of the internet where these folks can operate, where we can't find out what they're talking about and how they're planning. There's got to be a way to compromise this. We've got to be able to sit down, and this is one of those things when this gentleman asked about how you develop these compromises. We've got to sit down with the folks in Silicon Valley and say, it is unacceptable to us that you are going to keep large parts of electronic communication that's going on in this country shielded from a search warrant, a court-ordered search warrant. You're not able to get this information. I have real concerns about that, and I think that we've got to be able to sit down and come to some kind of agreement on this, some way to work the technology where when law enforcement has a demonstrated need to a court to get certain information, that we get it. Because let's face it, everybody, the only way we're going to prevent death in this country from the hands of terrorists is to get them before they act. You know, when I became U.S. Attorney, President Bush told all the U.S. attorneys that it was no longer acceptable for us to do law enforcement the way we'd always done it, which is a crime is committed, we piece together the evidence, we catch the criminal, we punish them, we put them in jail. He said, in terrorism, that's unacceptable because that means there'll be dead Americans everywhere. You got to catch them before. It was a paradigm shift in the way we did law enforcement in this country. And it took a while to get used to it. But we're used to it now. We've got to do it, and we've got to gin it up. Because the threats we're facing are significant, and they will threaten our very way of life. And so my view on it is we've got to find a way to compromise. It's got to be through conversation with the folks in the private sector who are doing this encryption work, and they've got to give us a way to be able to get in there when a court gives us the permission to be able to do it. To me, that's just common sense. And you know what? If you're not engaged in illegal terrorist conduct, I don't want to read your emails. I don't care. I don't care what you're writing to your friends. I don't care what you're writing to your girlfriend. I don't care what you're writing to your mother or father. And I don't want to be on your cell phone either. I really don't care. I got plenty of other much more important things to do than to worry about what you're talking about or any of these folks here. But if you're communicating with a known terrorist around the world, you better believe I want to know what you're doing, because I want to make sure that before you put some plot in place that's going to kill innocent Americans, that I catch you first. So that's where I strike the balance on that. All right. Now, my staff is telling me I could take one more question, but I'm going to take at least two. And here's why. I want them to understand, first off, that I'm the boss. Now, you laugh about this, right? But here's the deal. You know what it's like to run for President of the United States. Here's what it's like. You are surrounded every day by people younger than you that tell you where to go and what to do every minute of the day. The only place that I am free from the tyranny of the young is when I'm standing right here and I got this microphone in my hand. They can't tell me I have to go. They can suggest I go. They make little symbols, like you'll see them walking around. They're going like this. That's the signal that I can only take one more question. Well, the heck with them. I'm having fun tonight. I'm going to empty the tank right here at Mickey's because this is my last town hall meeting, and then I get on a plane and go home tomorrow to go see my wife and my kids. So I'm emptying the tank at Mickey's tonight. We're going to take at least two more questions and maybe more. Yes, sir, right there.
So in regards to national security terrorism, as another lucky recipient of a all-expenses-paid trip, I went to Guantanamo Bay and was a prison guard there. Now, as president, what are you going to do in regards to the prison facility there? Obama said he's going to close it. Still waiting.
Yeah.
But also the detainees that are being released periodically throughout here, they are also returning to the fight in the Middle East. What are you going to do to prevent that?
President Christie will keep Guantanamo open, and will keep the people who are there. The president's own director of national intelligence has said that at least 30% of the people this president has released from Guantanamo Bay are now back in the terrorism business. 30%. And he wants to close it completely. He is an embarrassment on national security. an embarrassment. I mean, these are enemy combatants who want to wage war against the United States, and he wants to close Guantanamo. I'm sure this is part of his, new love for Cuba, which, by the way, I have a hard time understanding, because as soon as we gave away diplomatic relations to Cuba for nothing in return, no compromises from Cuba at all, what's the first thing Castro says? He wants Guantanamo back, and get ready for this one. He wants reparations paid from the United States to Cuba for the damage that our embargo has caused to Cuba. Is it a coincidence now all of a sudden the president's moving to try to close Guantanamo? I guarantee you he wants to give it back. I don't get this guy. I mean, seriously, I wouldn't let him negotiate anything for me. I wouldn't let this guy buy me a car. I mean, seriously, can you imagine if Barack Obama showed up here tonight and he said, I'm going to take you to the car dealer, we're going to buy a car? You know how that would go, right? He'd walk in, he'd say, here's my friend over here, and he's not leaving this showroom tonight without a car, so let's talk price. He would leave with a car, empty pockets, right? This guy can't negotiate a thing. I'm going to be very clear about this. Guantanamo will stay open. Those enemy combatants will stay in Guantanamo Bay, and they will stay as long as we remain at war with radical Islamic jihadism around the world. That's the way it's going to go if I'm president. That lady right back there at the bar. Always wanted to say that. The lady at the bar. Yes.
There you go. Right here. Governor Christie, you said that you wanted to repeal and replace Obamacare.
Yes, ma'am.
What are you going to replace it with?
You got it. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to give each state in America a year to come up with their own plan that applies to their state. Okay? It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all for us to have one national program. I mean, let's take our two states, for instance, right? New Jersey and Iowa. Most Iowans that I've spoken to, the challenges for access to care for Iowans is much more about distance than it is about price. Price is part of it, but it's also distance. How far do you have to travel to get to a specialist that really can deal with your problem, to get access to a hospital that's going to have the specialists and the care you need to take care of your individual problem? In New Jersey, the most densely populated state in the country, we trip over a hospital every 4 miles. We don't have an access issue in New Jersey. We've got plenty of hospitals, more than we need. Our problem is exclusively price, because everything's so expensive in New Jersey, it applies the same thing to health care. Why would you think that a health care plan that works for New Jersey to solve New Jersey's problems would work for Iowa? Makes no sense. So here's my idea. My idea is let every governor and state legislature develop their own plan within a year of my presidency. And it's not optional. They have to come up with a plan. You can't punt. You got to do it. And the plan, it just makes sense that I trust Branstad and the legislature here to come up with a plan that'll be responsive to your needs. And you should want them to make the decision, not people in Washington, D.C. The folks in Washington, D.C., if you don't like the plan, you can't get to them. Try to do something to change Obamacare right now. It's like banging your head against the wall. Yet we have United Healthcare, the biggest insurer in America, who's now saying they're pulling out of the Obamacare exchanges. Why? Because they're losing money. Is this a shock? Here's what's happening. Because the president has permitted this under his system. People are going into the exchanges and buying insurance right before they need to have some kind of major procedure. They go and have the procedure, and then they cancel their insurance. And they get a pro rata refund back from the company. I mean, people are gaming the system. Well, of course you're going to game the system. You have this big national system that you can game. Each individual state should be doing this. And by the way, that's not only practical and the right way to do it, it's also consistent philosophically. The Constitution has the 10th Amendment in it, and the 10th Amendment says anything that's not specifically delineated in this document, that power reverts back to the states. I've read the Constitution. I don't see health care anywhere in there as a power of the federal government. Yet Barack Obama's grabbing for more and more power all the time, right? So let's trust the states and the governors to do this the right way. Because you know what? If they don't, you'll kick them out, right? You'll kick them out. Your legislator's not doing what you want to do, except for Jake, of course, you'll kick them out. Because he'll always do what you need him to do. Here's the thing. Obamacare needs to be scrapped because it doesn't work. And we all knew it wouldn't work. The only one who didn't know is the guy who signed it and all the people who follow him because he told them to follow him. We don't want the federal government run our healthcare system. If federal government run the healthcare system was so great, then why do cancer patients from Canada come to the United States to get treated? If single-payer, government-run healthcare system was so marvelous, why is that happening? It's happening because the quality of care that's given here is better, and we don't want to lose that quality of care by giving it away to the government to run. And by the way, is it because the government does so many other things so great that we decided to give them this? It's not logical. Let's stop, and let's get it back to the states. Yes, sir, right there. I'll give you mine.
So I'm a firm believer of life from conception to natural death, and you already spoke to the later stages of life with the diseases and healthcare there. But the needs of the unborn and the needs of the lifelong severely disabled, and would like to hear where you stand on all of that.
Sure. Listen, I'm pro-life, and I believe that every life is an individual gift from God. Now, we have restricted ourselves as a party in the way we talk about this. We tend to spend all of our time talking about the 9 months in the womb. Those are important times. But if you're going to be pro-life, I want you to be pro-life for the whole life, not just for those 9 months. See, I'd suggest to you that that's the easiest time to be pro-life. 9 months in the womb, they're perfect. They're absolutely perfect. Man, it's when they come out that being pro-life is tough. You know, when they're in the womb, they've never done anything to disappoint us, right? Life doesn't become complicated most of the time in the womb. But we only we spend all of our time talking about those 9 months. See, I'm pro-life for the 16-year-old drug-addicted teenager laying on the floor of the county lockup. Her life is a precious gift from God, too. And we need to get that child treatment. We don't need to throw her in jail. If she's not violent and she's not a dealer profiting from putting this poison into families, then we need to give her treatment, not just lock her up. Because that life is a precious gift from God also. You know, and folks who suffer from profound disabilities should not be institutionalized unless that's the only choice we have to deal with their disability. The fact is, in New Jersey, when I became governor, we institutionalized the second most people who are developmentally disabled of any state in America behind Texas. And we've begun now to stop that because it's not the most humane way to go. So we're moving towards group homes and less restrictive settings so that those parents of those children can get what every parent wants, which is that child to develop to his or her fullest potential, whatever that is. And depending where you are in the spectrum of developmental disabilities, that could be enormous possibilities or just incremental improvements. But each incremental improvement is a miracle to that parent. And they love that child just as much as if that child had no challenges. We need to be responsive and reactive to that. We need to start dealing with mental illness in this country also. We don't talk about it. We're ashamed of it. You know, I use this comparison all the time to folks, you know. I mean, my mom was an addict. She was addicted to smoking. She started smoking when she was 16 years old in 1948, when no one knew that smoking was really bad for you. And once she found out it was bad for her, she tried to quit over and over again. Over and over again. She tried the gum, the patches. There was even a time when she tried hypnosis. Now, this did nothing for the smoking, but it mellowed her out a little bit, which we really liked, you know. His mom had some rough edges to her, and so we liked it when she was under hypnosis, but she didn't stay because it didn't help the smoking. And then inevitably, when she was 71 years old, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. 55-year smoker. No one said to me when that happened, don't treat her, she's getting what she deserves. No one said that. Right? She made a choice, but she was an addict. She had a disease. Everyone said, we pray for her, get her treatment, let's hope for the best. It didn't work out. But would we have said the same thing about my mom if she was a heroin addict? Would we have said the same thing about my mother if she had mental illness? Right? We don't talk about those things because somehow we think those things reflect upon us. We think that if our child becomes a drug addict, that means we were a bad parent. We think someone who's become a drug addict maybe is not educated. Maybe they come from a bad neighborhood. Maybe they have just one parent rather than two. All that is baloney. The addiction that drug addiction is, does not discriminate. The other person I talk about is a friend of mine from law school. He was in my study group. Best looking guy among us, best athlete, went to an Ivy League undergrad school. One of the editors of the Law Review. First one of our group of 8 guys and women who studied together to get a job. First one to become partner. He married a great looking woman. They had 3 beautiful daughters. He had a great house, great car, great job, lots of money. And into our 40s was still like in the best shape. We hated him. We really did. And he used to run, 10, 12, 15 miles a week. And as he got into his 40s, he was not giving in to how age sometimes makes us lose a little edge. He went out for a run one day, hurt his back. And he went to a chiropractor. Other doctors tried to get help. Couldn't get help. He went to a pain management doctor. And that doctor gave him Percocet. And about a year later, I got a call from his wife. And she said, I kicked him out of the house. He's addicted to these pain pills. And now he's starting to drink. And I can't trust him around the girls. He's living at his mom's house. You need to go and have an intervention. And so me and the folks from the study group went. We did an intervention with him. He's in complete denial about it. We got him into treatment. And over the next 10 years, we worked like crazy to keep him in treatment and get him better. In that intervening time, that 10 years period, his wife divorced him. He lost the right to see his children. He lost his job. He lost his license to practice law. He lost his driver's license. He lost his home. And he spent through most of his money, including his retirement money. And a year and a half or so ago, on a Sunday morning, Mary Pat and I got the call that we've been dreading for a long time. They found him in a motel room in New Jersey with an empty bottle of Percocet and an empty quart of vodka, and he was dead at 52 years old. I tell you that story because by every measure that we deemed success in this country, he had it. Good looking, smart, well educated, great job, lots of money, beautiful wife, great children, great career. He's dead. He's a dead drug addict. There but for the grace of God go I. And every one of us needs to think that way. There but for the grace of God go I. Every one of us in this room has made a bad choice at some time in our lives, everybody. Every one of us. We just got lucky for some of us that it didn't involve drugs. You're going to be pro-life for the whole life. Treatment didn't work for him. I wish it would have. But it doesn't mean we don't try. And so when you ask about the continuum of life, we need to not only think about those things that everybody often thinks about, but we need to think about the challenges that life presents to us, that God places in front of us. And are we going to turn our backs on those people, or are we going to embrace them and try to help them? We need a president who's going to talk about embracing those folks and trying to help them. Jailing people for these things, if they're not violent, they're not dealers, doesn't make sense anymore. And mental illness is not something we should be ashamed of, but something that we need to embrace. Because when we don't, those people don't get better, they get worse, and some of them wind up committing horrific acts that we then throw our hands up and say, what could we have done differently? We could have helped that human being, because that disturbed life is a precious life too. So to me, pro-life is a much bigger and broader issue than just what at times we discuss in the political realm, or what gets talked about in the media, or even around a kitchen table in a home. I'm proud the Republican Party is the pro-life party. And I want us to be pro-life for the whole life, everybody. You know what's going to happen if we are, and we start talking that way? We're going to get more converts to our cause. Because people will say, well, wait, I'm for that. Yeah, no, I agree. That life is precious. Yes, I want to be part of that. That's the way we're going to create a movement in this country that's broad and much bigger than the one we have right now to protect life at every stage of life. And that's the kind of president I want to be. That's what I want to inspire in this country, and if you work with me, we can do that. All right. I've now taken 3 when I was supposed to take 1. So I'll take 1 more because this lady's like waving over here to me. So I'll give you mine.
I was hoping tonight to hear, and no one else asked the question, so I'm going to give it to you now. I'm curious about our relationship with our allies. We seem to have really lost face in the world, and so I'm just very curious on what your plan is to restore the relationships.
When people ask me, you get asked this question all the time, like, what are the first 3 things or the first 5 things or 4 things you're going to do as president? Always, whether it's 3, 4, or 5, whatever anybody asks me, restoring our relationships with our allies is one of the top 3. Here's what I'm going to do. In the first 100 days, I'm going to invite the President of Mexico, the Prime Minister of Canada, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the President of France, the Chancellor of Germany, and the Prime Minister of Israel, individually to come to this country, to come meet with me at Camp David, and I'm going to ask them to do 2 things. The first thing is I'm going to let them vent about the way they've been treated over the last 7 years by the President. And they need to get that out of their system. And I need to listen. And then I want to say to them, what is your strategic vision for our relationship over the next 4 years? And then let's have a conversation about it. We need to bring our allies back in as partners, not as people we dictate to as the leader of the free world. But we need to listen to and we need to let them be a part of it, because if they're partners in it and they own a part of it and they believe that it's their idea too, they're going to be much more willing to fight for it. And the most important thing a president can do with an ally is keep your word. If you make a promise, keep it. Don't change it because your poll numbers go down. This president promised to attack Assad in Syria if he used chemical weapons on his people. He did, and the president didn't do it. So if you're in Saudi Arabia or in Egypt, if you're in England or you're in France, and you see that, what do you think when he makes you a promise? It's negotiable. You can't have that. The President of the United States is the most important leader in the world, and his word has to be inviolable. And that's the way we rebuild our relationship with our allies, that they understand that, you know, people have said lots of things about me over time, as I'm sure you've heard and read. You know, lots of stuff said about me. Here's one thing that's never been said about me. I'm not misunderstood. I am not misunderstood. No one's ever said, yeah, that Christie guy, I wish he would be a little more clear. I wish he'd be a little more, you know, direct about things. I'm never misunderstood. They will not misunderstand me. And they will know what my friends know, which is when I make a promise, I keep it. And they're our friends, and we got to keep our promises to our friends, or else we will be friendless in the world, and that will be a very lonely place and a dangerous place for our country to be. So that's what I do with our allies. All right. So here's what we're going to do. 2 things to say to you before we leave. First is thank you. Thank you so much for coming here tonight in such large numbers. Thank you to the folks over in the overflow room. Let's applaud for the overflow room, people. It's pretty good when you hang in the overflow room. That's a good thing, and I appreciate it. I want to thank you. People ask me from New Jersey all the time what it's like to campaign for president in Iowa and New Hampshire. And I tell them that if you've gotten cynical about politics, come here. Because here we are on a Wednesday night, the night before New Year's Eve. 400 plus of you show up tonight between here and the overflow room to listen to a guy from New Jersey tell you why I think I should be president of the United States. And you know what? If that doesn't restore your faith in democracy, that you're willing to do those things, put in that effort, give everybody a fair hearing, and then make your choices, then there's nothing that can restore your faith in democracy. I tell you, it's restored mine by participating in this process and watching you do what you do every day. So I say thank you for that, and thank you for what you're going to do over the next 33 days to help to make sure we get the right person nominated for President of the United States. Second thing I want to share with you is this. It is not enough for all of you to go to chrischristie.com and, you know, see all the proposals I put forward and see the specific policy things I want to do as president. It's important to consider that. It really is. because that's a bit of a blueprint for what kind of presidency I'd want to have. But here's the thing. When George W. Bush was here in 1999 and 2000 as governor of Texas, campaigning for president, and I know he held some town hall meetings, I'm sure that no one asked him this question. No one asked him, Governor, what would you do if 19 hijackers hijacked 4 airplanes and flew 2 of them into the World Trade Center, 1 of them into the Pentagon, and 1 of them got crashed into a field in Pennsylvania while it was heading towards Washington to destroy another one of our monuments? I'm sure nobody asked him that. My point to you is that we can't know everything that's going to happen. Even you, really well-educated voters here in Iowa, can't anticipate everything that's going to happen to me when I become president of the United States. So how do you make the choice? How do you choose? You have to know who I am. Because if you don't know who I am, you're not going to understand whether or not, when a crisis comes, am I the guy that can handle it for you? So I'm going to end tonight by telling you who I am. All right? I'm the product of an Irish father and a Sicilian mother. Yeah, wow is right. Now, my father is 82 years old, and we live stream all these town hall meetings over the internet, so I know he's watching. He watches them every time. And so Dad's watching tonight. Hello, Dad. And if he were here and you got a chance to meet him, and he is threatening to come to Iowa now. He went to New Hampshire last weekend. I think New Hampshire is still recovering. So Iowa needs to gird up and be ready after the new year. I think you're going to see my dad out here in Iowa campaigning for me. And when he came to New Hampshire, you know, we had a bus. We had a 4-day bus tour. So I said, Dad, ride on the bus with me and come to these events. He goes, no. I'm not riding on the bus. I'm going door to door. My 82-year-old father went door to door with our volunteers, knocking on doors in New Hampshire of Republican voters. Imagine, like, when they open the door and he's like, hi, I'm Chris Christie's father. You know, it must have been pretty interesting. But my dad is that kind of guy. He loves people. He's gregarious. He's outgoing. If he were here, he'd hug you at the end of this thing. He'd make you laugh. He'd tell embarrassing stories about me. He's the full package. But I told him, despite all that, growing up in the automobile of life, my dad was merely a passenger. My mother was the driver. Mom was judge, jury, and executioner, and she liked the last part the best. And she set all the rules in the house. Mom was the rule setter. And the #1 rule in the house, proclaimed by her, was there is no suffering in silence. Now, I think Mom made this her rule because she used it the most, but she wanted, if there was a problem, she wanted it out on the table. She had a concern or an issue, she wanted to say it. And, you know, when I got to be a teenager finally, I was like, you know, I could push back a little bit. But, all right, enough, Mom. I get it. Stop. I hear you. And she'd say, no, Christopher. You know, I'm not going to shut up. You're going to listen now. I got to get this off my chest. There will be no deathbed confessions in this family. You're going to hear it right now. And she was pretty true to her word, and that's the way she raised us. And I told you earlier that Mom got diagnosed with lung cancer. On Valentine's Day of 2004, my mother got diagnosed with lung cancer. And for any of you who've gone through this, you know that with lung cancer, it's either a very long disease or a very short disease. And unfortunately, in my mom's case, it was very short. It was pretty severe when it got diagnosed. And by the end of April of that year, I was in San Diego for the U.S. Attorney's National Conference. And I got a call from my younger brother who told me that the doctors had to put Mom back in the hospital and that she was real bad. And they said that if I wanted to see her again, I needed to come home right away. So I got in a red-eye flight that night from San Diego, and I flew back to New Jersey. I landed at the airport, got in my car, and drove to the hospital where she was. And when I got there, they had started to give her morphine. And for those of you who've gone through losing a loved one to cancer, you know that's like the last steps. They're just trying to make her comfortable now and ease the pain a little bit and get her ready to die. And so I got to the hospital, I sat next to the bed, and she was asleep for a while. And finally she woke up, and it was so typical of my mother. She had not seen me for a week. Right? And she didn't think I was going to be there. I was supposed to be away for the rest of that week. And so she woke up and she looked at me and she said, what day is it? And I said, it's Friday, Mom. Good to see you. I just got home from my trip. I'm glad you're doing well. She said, what time is it? And I said, it's 9:30 in the morning. And she said, go to work. I said, Mom, I just flew across the whole country to come and see you. I said, I'm taking today off from work, and I'm staying with you. So I'm going to work today. She said to me, Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work. Like, what are you, afraid of not getting your taxpayers' money's worth? Like, I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. Like, I'm staying here with you today. And she reached over and she grabbed my hand and she said, Christopher, go to work. It's where you belong. There's nothing left unsaid between us. Other than the birth of my 4 children, it was the single most powerful moment of my life. My mom was giving me permission to let her go. And she was giving me that permission on the basis that she had taught me her whole life. I sat there and thought to myself, damn, she's right again. There are no deathbed confessions because everything's been said. All the grievances have been aired, all the joys have been shared. Everything that we needed to say to each other, we've said. There's no mysteries between us. It's the way she taught us to live our lives. And so I did as I was told. I got up, I kissed her on the forehead, and I said, okay, Mom, I'm going to work. And she looked at me and she said to me, good boy. And I left the room. 3 hours later, she went into a coma, and 3 days later, she died. And those were the last words we exchanged with each other. And I have no regrets because I lived my life the way she taught me. And I know that if my mom were still alive to see this circus that my life has become, she'd have a lot to say. 2 things I know she'd say for sure. The first thing is, she'd say to me, so, you're running for president of the United States, Mr. Big Shot. I changed your diaper. I know who you are. Don't act big with me. My mother would want me to keep my feet on the ground and my head on my shoulders. Really important to her. And then I'm sure she'd say to me, all right, if you're going to do this, then remember something. You're asking these people to give you the most trust they can give to anybody outside of their family. So tell them everything. Tell them exactly what you think and exactly how you feel. Because in a trusting relationship, Chris, that's what we do. And so, you know, the campaign slogan, telling it like it is, and all this stuff is a tribute to her. That's how she raised me. And that's who I'll be. So if you give me the chance to be president of the United States, that's what you're getting. You're never going to have to wonder what I'm thinking. You'll hear it. There may be nights you turn off the television because you'd heard more than enough. All right? You'll never have to wonder how I'm feeling because you'll see it. I don't hide it very well. When I'm happy or sad or angry or joyous, you'll see it. You'll never have to wonder what I'm willing to fight for because you'll see me fighting for it. There's nothing subtle about me. And you'll never have to wonder how hard I'm willing to fight because you're watching me do it right now. This lady reminded me that I got some room to move in the polls. We've moved some. We're moving in the right direction. But you only do it by fighting. By fighting as hard as you can and working as hard as you can to earn people's trust. So tonight, I want you to know, that's the kind of president I'll be. That's who I am. So when the crisis comes across the desk, you're going to know exactly what I'm thinking and exactly what I'm feeling because that's the way I've lived my life. And I'm certainly not going to change now at 53 years old. This is it. This is who I am. And so I ask you tonight for your vote. I ask you to caucus for me on February 1st. But I don't just want your vote. It may be impolite to say, but that's not enough. Your vote will get me to the White House, and that'll be great. But I want your trust and your confidence too. Because if I have that, I got a chance to be a good president. Your vote just gets me there. Your trust and your confidence gives me a chance to be successful. And we are starving for a successful presidency. We're starving for one. And I want to help give it to you. But hear what I'm saying. I want to help give it to you. I can't give it to you by myself. That's never the way this country's worked. I want to be the president who works with you to reach every one of our aspirations that we can reach, to face every one of the challenges that confront us, and to take advantage of every opportunity that we put out there for our children and our grandchildren. And if we do that, then we can look at our kids and our grandkids and say, we did our job, now it's your turn. That's the kind of America I want to lead, and that's the kind of America I want to be a citizen of, and we can do this together. So thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate it very much. Good, thank you.